When you were running, you had to do some Uber work, right? You worked as an Uber driver because you needed to you needed to live while you were also running for Congress. What's it going to be like up here? I mean, this is not cheap. Do you have to?
Yeah. I mean, it's not cheap. I'm dealing with it right now, getting denied from apartments, trying to figure out where to live because I have bad credit. Probably just going to have to like couch surf for a little bit.
That was Representative-elect Maxwell Alejandro Frost of Florida, the first member of Gen Z elected to Congress, on struggling to find an apartment for many reasons, including available housing inventory and credit. Nothing unusual for the average 25-year-old in America. And while being a congressman-elect is not exactly average, that situation should be something that a lot of people can relate to, with the country in the midst of an affordable housing crisis that's hitting young Americans particularly hard. Nearly one-third of Gen Z is still living with their parents. And among those who have been able to move out, a third are spending about half of their monthly income on rent. But the Republican Party clearly doesn't care about that. Instead, the RNC research team mocked Frost in a tweet for having to couch surf with a salary of $174,000 a year. Frost clapped back, tweeting, LOL, so out of touch that they don't understand how renting an apartment works. Let me break this down. I don't get my first paycheck till February, and I don't have a lot of money. When you move into an apartment, you pay first, deposit, sometimes last, and for furniture. And joining me now is Congressman-elect Maxwell Alejandro Frost. And Congressman-elect, it's great to see you again. And I am somebody who does remember what it's like to do rent. And it's changed a lot even from when I was your age. I mean, back then you could just do first and last. Now a lot of these places want first, last, and additional security deposit. Like, it actually is really expensive to rent. And D.C. is one of the most expensive places to rent. So talk a little bit about your experience of just trying to find an apartment.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, it's difficult. And, there's millions of Americans who face this on a daily basis across this country. We know that it's expensive to move in somewhere. Like I said in the tweet, it's not just, your rent. You got first, you got last, you got deposit, you got to furnish it. A lot of leasing agencies and a lot of these management companies are actually viewing the amount of money that you pay for your application fee and to run the credit check as a source of revenue. We see some of these fees going up to $200 at the maximum. And so it just shows that moving in is unaffordable for so many people. You got to have so much capital on hand. And for me, this is my second place I'm looking for, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of Republican folks clowning me on Twitter, saying, oh, you can't afford an apartment. This is my second apartment. I have a home in Orlando. But it just goes to show that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on affordable housing, especially in protecting renters and tenants.
I mean, and you live in Orlando. I mean, Florida is one of the most expensive places to live in this country. Let's just be clear. It's expensive like on New York and California level. There's just a list here that shows the states with the highest rent, one-bedroom rent estimates. D.C. doesn't even rank. It isn't even in there. It's number 10. Washington State's number 10. But Hawaii's number 1, New York, California, Virginia. Florida's number 6. Florida's actually really, really expensive. You're talking about like 1.4, $1,418 a month. But the other piece is, and I think a lot of Americans can relate to this, you talked about credit. Credit will keep somebody, even if they are making a decent salary. And, a congressman's salary is a pretty good salary, but credit will keep you out. And sometimes the credit checks for renting are even tougher than the credit checks for buying. I know people in that situation who are your age.
Yeah, exactly. And look, when it comes down to my campaign, I worked Uber to pay my bills. It didn't cover everything. I had to run up a lot of my credit cards to be able to just live while I was campaigning. And that affects your credit. Believe it or not, I had amazing credit before I ran for Congress. And now not so much. And so I'm working through that. And the other thing that's funny from this RNC research account is they're acting like I get a lump sum of, $174,000 on day one. And that's not the way that salary works. I don't get paid till February. And, the whole point of me bringing this up is it shows that, look, the entry point to the seat of power determines who gets to that seat of power. And if that entry point filters out working class and poor Americans, then we shouldn't be surprised on why we don't have as many working class people represented in our government.
And I'm so glad that you ran and won, because you're going to represent so many people who are going through the same thing, and they can relate to you because you're telling your story in a very open way. So I appreciate you doing that. I would be remiss if I had you on from Florida and didn't ask you about your governor. He is now using the resources of the state when he could be fixing the insurance crisis in that state and the affordability crisis in that state. He's investigating a holiday drag show in my former county, in Broward County. That's what he's doing with his resources and threatening that people who take children to a drag show with them can have the kids, have an intervention from Child Protective Services. What in the world is going on in your state?
That's a big question, Joy. They have a few hours. No, I'll tell you this. Our governor is more concerned with children going to drag shows than he is with children getting shot in their classrooms, than people getting shot on the street. And it shows the hypocrisy. I mean, look, due to his failures to provide for working class people, he's scapegoating vulnerable communities. You can't afford your rent, it's the problem of drag queens. You can't afford this, it's the problem of our LGBTQ plus community, or immigrants, or black people, or poor people. And I think Floridians are going to see right through it. And look, part of what I see my job as is obviously the work of legislating here in D.C., the work of power building at home in Orlando, but also communicating. Every time this governor does something that's dangerous, and we see him do this all the time, he acts like a dictator, and we have to be honest and blunt about it. We have to tell people how that's going to harm folks. And so he's using these resources that our state has to criminalize drag shows, but not criminalize and ensuring that, folks can live in their cities without the fear of gun violence. And we see right through it.
Well, thank you, and tell him about it before he bans history and information in that state, because he's on something with his supposed free state of Florida. It's something to behold. Congressman-elect Maxwell Alejandro Frost, come back anytime. Thank you, and good luck finding an apartment in D.C. All right.